Welcome to the Essentials of Software Testing. I'm Judy McKay, and I'll be your presenter for this introductory section. The Essentials of Software Testing is an 8-part course prepared by AT SQA, which stands for the Association for Testing and Software Quality Assurance. AT SQA is an ISO-compliant organization. I was formed in 2019 to actually give us a way to support software testing and software quality assurance, basically by providing more data, more up-to-date data, all in one place. Because right now things change so fast, it's hard to keep up. And how do you know, is Bitcoin really important to know about? Or should you put your emphasis on artificial intelligence? Or should you go with DevOps? So what we're trying to do is gather the information into one place, so you basically have a one-stop shop when you want to upskill, learn about something new, read about trends, or maybe also hear about what doesn't work, because a lot of our world is about things that don't work. In fact, that's kind of what we concentrate on. AT SQA provides syllabi, training, exams, white papers, webinars, basically a way of disseminating information and giving you a way if you want to gain certifications or micro-certifications, but basically a way to always be upskilling, because in this industry we always need to be upskilling. AT SQA is managed by practitioners and trainers, so this isn't theory, this isn't from a bunch of consultants, this is actually for people who are practicing in the real world or conducting training courses. And that keeps us in touch with reality. We're not going to go off on a new fad because it sounds cool or it looks like we could make money off of it. We're after what really works in the real world. We're in the process right now of producing a series of syllabi. The Software Test Essentials is obviously first, since it is essential. At SQA, it's always a balance between real world and new stuff. New stuff is shiny and it's interesting, and some of the buzzwords are cool, but come on, Bitcoin, I mean, that just sounds cool. But in reality, you can't learn about everything, right? So you've got to concentrate on what's really going to work, what's really going to be helpful for you in your career. And I mean, it's great to learn about the other stuff that's on the fringes, but you also want to keep with the mainstream, because you don't want to be out for a job interview, for example, and not be able to talk about DevOps. You don't want to be in a situation where somebody says, oh yeah, but do you use decision tables in your testing? And you have to say, decision tables? What are those? So that's why this first syllabi is concentrating on the essentials, the things that you really need to know. And because the way the industry has changed, testers are expected to have a broad knowledge. As you get into an Agile or a DevOps environment, that becomes quite critical. So what we're concentrating on is a high-level knowledge across a broad level of topics. And then, of course, those will be backed up by more specific areas where you'll be able to study in more depth if something particularly interests you, like, say, security. I, for one, am not a security tester, will never be a security tester, and it's one thing I kind of keep my hands off of, because I don't want to be in that position where I know enough to be dangerous. But you may be saying, security, man, I love security. Great. Then you know what? There'll be a security syllabus for you to look into. So the essentials is basically looking at the high-level breadth, but you can always go into the depth as we develop more and more syllabi and more training opportunities. So what are the essentials? Well, you could look at it as a springboard into newer and cooler stuff, different things, or you could look at it as the base of knowledge that you need to build upon. And that's a lot of the way we took it, it's the base of knowledge. Everybody should know this. Everybody in software testing should know these essentials. It's always going to be needed. It applies regardless of what technology you're using, what fancy tools you have, or boring tools. Say you're still in Excel. A lot of people are. What life cycle you're using. And also, the essentials are tool agnostic. They don't require that you use a particular tool or a particular type of tool. And this is an important thing to keep in mind, because tools come and go, honestly. Some are better supported than others, some are easier to use than others, but they do come and go. So, if you look years ago, WinRunner was the automation tool. Everybody used it. It was a massive amount of code. It's gone. Now you look at Selenium. Selenium's really popular, and it's free, which is a wonderful thing. But in 5 years, will it still be current? Who knows? So you can't just learn based on a tool. You have to learn the background and understand why you're using it. And then the tool is just that. It's a tool. It's not what's driving the way you do things. Now, with essentials, some projects use more, some projects use less of these essentials. It kind of depends on what you're doing and how big the project is. If you're doing a whole ERP rollout, you're going to need everything. You're going to need performance and security and usability. You're going to need all those things. But I want to caution you, even if you have a little project, even if it's a little mobile app, for example, you still better be thinking about security and performance and usability. So it's easier on larger projects, especially to get budget for all of those, non-functional quality characteristics, things like performance and usability. But they're just as important in the little ones too. So you may scale it down, you may not put as much time and effort into it, but they still need to be considered. And that's why they're considered essentials. You can't look at any project and say, I can ignore the essentials. You can't. So even if you consciously say, okay, performance does not matter, great. Make sure you document that someplace too and make sure that everybody agrees to it, because chances are it really will matter in the end. So essentials are essentials. If you choose to ignore them, then make sure that you note that that decision has been made. All software testers need to understand and master the essentials. Now, doesn't mean you have to be an expert. Doesn't mean you have to be, for example, I've said I'm not a security expert. Hasn't hurt me in my career, probably because I haven't pretended to be a security expert. But you need to understand what it is. You need to understand when to call for help more than anything. So what is EOST composed of? EOST is what we happily call the Essentials of Software Testing. It's an 8-part syllabus. Had the introduction, of course, test approaches, all of the different ways that you can approach software testing, the different techniques that should be used. And, this doesn't go into depth into all of the testing techniques that are out there, but certainly the ones that you're likely to use and should know about. Even if you say, decision tables, don't think I'll ever use those. You probably will if you ever get in a complex business rules testing situation, because they're really handy. Automation, test automation, performance, we'll talk about. Cybersecurity, obviously that's not my section. Usability, how it matters, what to do about it, and a little bit on accessibility as well, because in some cases you're doing software that is required to meet certain accessibility standards. So again, you don't have to be an accessibility expert, you just have to know what those mean. And if somebody says, hey, we need to be WCAG AA, you don't say, what? You need to be what? So just enough to know, okay, I got to go find an accessibility company or an accessibility expert that can help me reach that level. So that's really what we're after here, is to set that knowledge so you know when to ask for help and kind of where to look for help if you need it. And then we'll also talk about connected devices, which is the new fancy world of the Internet of Things. So connected devices means anything that connects to the internet, which would be, for example, smartphones, but it could also be your refrigerator. It could be your home security system. So the Internet of Things, of course, has just exploded with all of the different things that can talk to the internet. And in honesty, a lot of people have no idea how many of the devices that they own may be happily chatting on the internet. Don't really know about it. So got to test it, even if we don't think people are actually going to use some of those capabilities. So for the presenters we have, it's 3 of us that'll be giving the presentations here to make up the full set of EOST, the essentials. Randy Rice is going to be covering test automation, cybersecurity, and performance. Tahita Praveen is going to be covering the test approach, which also includes software development life cycles and DevOps. And I'm Judy McKay. I'll be covering the introduction, test techniques, usability testing, and the Internet of Things areas. So basically broken into these 8 modules. The modules are designed to be standalone. It's a good idea, though, always to be looking at that test approach and test techniques, just because the other modules tend to refer back to those and things that are discussed in those areas. None of these are very long. The idea here is to give you a good introduction and give you a basis to start from, And then, of course, the more in-depth syllabi will come after that.